Good morning. I'm Dr. John McDougall. The problems may seem overwhelming, and they can be, but there have to be solutions. And we have a whole world ahead of us. We have a planet to save. We have some serious problems facing us, but I believe there's a common denominator to all of our problems that we have to address to solve the situation. And that common denominator is the diet. It's the common denominator for chronic diseases, which I've been taking care of during my whole medical career. It's the common denominator for our climate problems and the common denominator for the acute pandemic of COVID-19. Yes, there is an answer, but we all have to focus our attention on it and put every single bit of effort we have into this one goal, and that is to change the diet of the planet. The truth is simple and easy to understand. We are not going to solve our problems with technology without dealing with the basic issues. For example, I've been taking care of people with chronic illnesses my entire career, which has been about a half a century. My colleagues have been trying to get these problems solved by giving various medications, other kinds of treatments, but the patients never seem to respond. That's because the people with chronic diseases, the high blood pressure, the diabetes, the obesity, the arthritises, the cancers, they're suffering from food poisoning. They're suffering from a dietary disease. And modern medicine doesn't really deal with this simple solution to change people's diets. They're looking for Star Wars solutions. When it comes to the climate, we run into the same issues. The solution people are looking for is the high-tech solution, such as carbon capture. Maybe aliens will come from outer space and suck up the carbon dioxide from our atmosphere and save us. We're not willing to address the issues of the reduction or stopping the production of greenhouse gases through fossil fuels. And we don't really have the understanding of the impact of diet on our climate. And so it is with the current pandemic. We've all focused our attention in the year 2020 on COVID-19. It's dominated everything. And we've been looking for solutions. And there are solutions out there, high-tech solutions such as medications and vaccines. Not that they don't work, but they're not where we should put our initial efforts. Our initial efforts should be towards public health measures. And as you will discover through the information I give you over the next few minutes, we also have to focus on diet. Diet is the common denominator when it comes to chronic illnesses, the diseases that I've taken care of during my entire medical career, when it comes to the climate and mitigating the changes that have taken place, and getting a handle on the COVID-19 to prevent it from becoming a much more serious problem in your life, a problem that instead of just mild symptoms results in you suffering from hospitalizations, the need for mechanical ventilation, and most timely death. Diet is the common denominator. I'd like to discuss all of these issues one at a time, but I want you to realize there are a whole bunch of side issues here for all of these subjects: chronic disease, climate change, COVID-19. They'll have financial implications. They have implications on our environment. They have religious implications. So these things affect many aspects of our lives, but I'd like to focus in on the particular problems and solutions. When it comes to chronic illness, we're talking about obesity, which affects about 80% of people, diabetes, high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease. That's what I've been taking care of my entire life. And I've had a very successful practice. In fact, I have to describe myself as the luckiest doctor in the world because my patients get well from chronic illnesses. The cause of chronic illnesses is food poisoning. I want to make this as simple as possible. And the way you solve diseases due to food poisoning is you identify the food poisons and then you eliminate them. You know the saying, stop throwing gasoline on a fire. If you eliminate the cause of your problems, they should go away. The cause of food poisoning for most people in Western society is animal products. I would add that also vegetable oils. For those of you interested in how I feel about food poisoning and a more detailed discussion, I encourage you to go to my website at drmcdougall.com. The diseases due to food poisoning are obesity with its associated problems, diabetes, both type 1 and type 2, although I'll be speaking just about type 2 diabetes during this presentation. Heart disease, which affects all the arteries of the body. 44,000 miles of arteries in the body are affected by the same processes of atherosclerosis. Gives you strokes, heart attacks, impotence, and so on. Various kinds of arthritis, like rheumatoid, psoriatic arthritis, nonspecific arthritis. These are due to the foods that we eat, and if we eliminate the food poisons, the animal products and the oils, people are cured. Various kinds of cancers like breast, colon, and prostate and uterus cancer are due to the diet that we eat. It's obvious that the health and the feelings in your gastrointestinal tract are due to what you put into it. For example, we have GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease. And most of you understand that this is due to what we eat. Some of you are still fixated on the high-tech solution of taking various types of antacids. But this is a dietary disease, obviously, which can be fixed easily by fixing the diet. And of course, constipation, a problem that most people have suffered from at one time or another, clearly due to what we eat, not just the fiber, but also other components of the diet. The way you solve these dietary diseases is you change the diet to what I would call a starch-based diet. Starches are rice, corn, potatoes, and sweet potatoes, and beans, peas, and lentils, and breads and pastas. These are starches. This is where you should get 80–90% of your calories from. In addition, you want to add some non-starchy green and yellow vegetables, such as kale and broccoli and lettuce, and a few fruits and vegetables. That's the diet that allows the body to heal itself and cures the diseases of food poisoning. I published various scientific studies reflecting the results of our work. For example, I reported over a 10-year period of time the results of 1,703 patients who went through my 10-day live-in program. No one was eliminated from this study. We took all participants, and what we found is that the average weight loss was 3.1 pounds over a 7-day period of time, eating an unrestricted amount of the recommended foods. The average cholesterol drop was 22 milligrams per deciliter. The average drop in blood pressure was 18/11 millimeters of mercury in those who had high blood pressure. And most of these patients were on medications. A really exciting thing for me as a doctor and for patients is the fact that we were able to get patients to reduce their medications or stop their medications. What we found is that 90% of people were able to reduce or stop their blood pressure and diabetes medications. Our work has also been studied independently. For example, Oregon Health and Science University did a 1-year study of our patients. What they did is they gathered a group of people. They ran a randomized control trial on these people over a 1-year period of time. They gathered the participants, they set up the study's design, they collected the data, they analyzed the data, and they reported the results. And what was found in a 1-year period of time in a randomized control trial, a gold standard of scientific study, is that the average weight loss was nearly 20 pounds for the entire year. The average cholesterol drop was nearly 20 milligrams per deciliter. People were able to reduce their blood pressure, their blood insulin levels, and their fatigue levels. And the really important thing, and what somewhat surprising thing, was that we found that 85% of people adhered to the program for the entire 12 months. Why? Because it was so effective, and also because of the fact that they really enjoyed the foods and they got a good education. Now, my work has also been studied independently in the country of New Zealand. Researchers took a community and taught them the McDougall diet. And as a result, over a 1-year period of time, they had an average weight loss of over 25 pounds. Their cholesterol drops were similar to what we found in our previous studies. And the adherence level was also similar to what we found. In their study, about 80% of people continued to go to the meetings. The reason people get well is quite simple. They stop the repeated injury. You might be able to relate to cigarette smoking, the damage that's done by inhaling cigarette smoke. The result of this injury is that you cough and you wheeze and you produce sputum in an effort to solve the problem. The problem is that most people smoke 20, 40 cigarettes a day. And the injury caused by this frequent of inhalation of cigarettes far outweighs the ability of the body to heal itself. And so lung disease progresses. The way you solve the problem, and every cigarette smoker or former cigarette smoker knows this, is you stop the repeated injury. And so it is with dietary diseases. If you can identify the source of injury and you can cause people to make changes, what happens is very simple. The body's healing abilities catch up with the repeated injury, and the overall progress is one of getting well. I'd like to talk to you now a bit about the effect of diet on climate. I was first made aware of the terrible problems we were in terms of our environment and global warming gases and pollution by Al Gore's documentary, An Inconvenient Truth. He talked about how we had to reduce fossil fuels, how the planet was already in big trouble in the year 2006. He did an update of his Inconvenient Truth just a couple of years ago. I'd like to point out in both of his lectures and his DVDs, he did not emphasize food as far as a cause or solution of our greatest climate problems. This was probably remedied by a report that came out the same year from the United Nations. It was called Livestock's Long Shadow. It was over a 400-page report. And what it said was that the agricultural industry accounted for 18% of the world's greenhouse gases, compared to all of transportation, which is fewer than 14% of the CO2 production. This is an extensive study and it's referred to often, but a lot of factors were left out when calculating the actual damage caused by the agricultural industry, the livestock industry in particular. I started writing about this in a newsletter that I published in December of 2006. So I've been interested in this for a long time, and I've been focused on the importance of diet and solving our planetary problems. And this is why I'm here to talk to you today. Subsequent to the Livestock's Long Shadow report, the World Watch Institute looked at the data and they included some factors that should have been included in the first study. And as a result of their recalculation, they estimated that over half the greenhouse gases can be attributed to the livestock industry. And this report given by Robert Goodland to our group many years ago suggested that we only had a few years left. This was 2003. Robert Goodland gave us 3 to 4 years to change our diet. And he focused clearly on the importance of changing the livestock industry and the agricultural industry. The Eat Lancet Commission is these days used as a landmark study and landmark conclusions and recommendations. The recommendations from the Eat Lancet Commission on planetary health are that we need to change to a diet of starches, vegetables, and fruits. And they also said we only have a short period of time. We've got maybe 10 to 12 years left before we are at a point where we can't turn things around. It's generally agreed by environmentalists, by scientists, and by medical doctors who are interested, as well as nutritionists, that the major polluters in our environment, as far as the agriculture industry is concerned, come from the livestock. We're talking particularly about beef, but also poultry and farm fish. And the way to reduce our greenhouse gases is to switch our calorie consumption to various kinds of starches like rice, corn, and potatoes. Estimates as far as the impact of making a change to an ideal diet, which would be a vegan diet, in other words, a diet with no animal products, the estimates are quite impressive. They suggest that if you switch to a vegan diet from the standard American diet, that you're able to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions from the livestock industry by as much as 80%. This is a profound change and should wake up everyone as to what we can accomplish by simple dietary changes. The Lancet came out with some recent recommendations in March of 2020, and they said that we can reduce our greenhouse gas production by about 50% if we switch from animals to starches. So the point being is we have serious problems that we must act on immediately, and we must focus our attention on what we eat, on the agriculture industry, and that to make the biggest difference, we have to make the biggest changes. And that would be to switch from the typical Western diet to a diet that we label as vegan, in other words, no animal products. But I call it more specifically a starch-based diet, a diet based on rice, corn, and potatoes, and pastas and breads. That's the kind of diet that we need to focus on. What will be the impact? Well, as I mentioned, I've been taking care of patients for almost a half a century. I've taken care of nearly 12,000 patients. I mean, directly, I've touched them. I've been their doctor, and I've seen them heal themselves from major life-threatening diseases to literally get up from their deathbed after changing their diet. And the way they did it is they stopped the repeated injury primarily from their fork and spoon. Mother Earth has the same capacity. Nature has an innate ability to heal if we stop the repeated injuries. And the miracles that are known and unknown, as far as our ability of our environment to recuperate, to return us to some sort of livable condition, is far greater than anybody estimates. But we've got to really take this seriously, and we've got to stop the greenhouse gases. And we also have to reduce the production of greenhouse gases from our dinner table. I mean, consider the potential that you have as individuals. You can change your diet right now, today, and you can influence a few other people and maybe a major number of people. The ability for folks to change is there. We just have to inform them. Now let's talk about infectious diseases. COVID-19, beginning in 2020, has changed our way of life throughout the world. It's made us also aware of the fact that we have the ability to change. We can live under different conditions. And we've seen the benefit from change in terms of our environment. The people in China see blue skies. In Venice, they see fish in the canals. And there's a lot of livestock running across our city streets. So COVID-19 has made us aware of many things that we were never aware of. And also, most importantly, the fact that we can change. Even before the virus came to the United States or Western Europe, researchers in China were aware of the fact that people who were in poor health did worse when it came to COVID-19. They discovered that people who were overweight, had heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure. They had a much more likelihood of having serious complications related to an infection from this virus. They were much more likely to be hospitalized, to end up on a mechanical ventilator, or even to die. And we knew that even before the virus came onto our shores. Scientists in the United States and around the world have recognized the implication of what we call comorbid or premorbid factors. These are things that are associated with our health and reflect whether we're healthy or unhealthy. Such conditions as obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes. These are conditions, as we talked about, are due to food poisoning. These are conditions that the McDougall diet easily treats, and the benefits are seen in a very short period of time. The Center for Disease Control has told us people who suffer from the diseases that the McDougall diet treats, a starch-based diet treats, are 6 times more likely to be hospitalized and 12 times more likely to die than somebody who was in good health. A similar understanding is reflected in Europe when the British Medical Journal came out and said the ultimate outcome of this viral infection depends upon what people eat, and that if we're going to reduce the impact of COVID-19 on our population, not only do we have to do public health measures, but we have to change our diet to a diet of whole grains, fruits, and vegetables. Diet affects the risk of getting more severe viral complications, viral diseases in many ways. For example, what you eat reflects the strength of integrity of your gut barrier. And if you eat a healthy diet, a diet based around plant foods, you end up with a healthy barrier that keeps the viruses out of the body. There are also many, many chemicals, we call them phytochemicals, that are present in foods that have antiviral effects. And this is an interesting subject, except for the fact that you must realize that what we're talking about in all circumstances is the same kind of diet. It's a diet based around rice, corn, potatoes, sweet potatoes, with the addition of fruits and vegetables. And as I mentioned, this kind of diet reflects itself in many conditions. One of the things that we analyze in our studies is the impact on blood cholesterol level. Well, this is important when it comes to COVID-19 because it's been discovered that cholesterol itself actually affects the ability of the virus to get from the outside world into the bloodstream and into your tissues, and particularly your lungs. Cholesterol combines with ACE2 inhibitors to form a bridge. And the more cholesterol you have in your body, the more efficient the bridges are, the greater number of bridges you have, and therefore the greater the transport of the virus into your system. Now, as I mentioned, we have a tremendous impact on blood cholesterol in our dietary change. We're able to drop blood cholesterol by 22 milligrams per deciliter in 7 days. You know, that leads me to believe that even after people get sick and they have the early symptoms of COVID-19, that it's not too late to change their diet. If we could cause a profound weight loss, a drop in cholesterol, drop in blood pressure, drop in insulin levels, drop in inflammation levels, if we can cause all that in 7 days, why wouldn't we be able to increase our defenses against this virus in that short period of time? It's not too late to change your diet. You know, this is really solid science when you see my colleagues adopting this kind of philosophy and understanding. And it's recommended that people lower their cholesterol in the medical business, but they want you to do it by a high-tech means, not by simply changing your diet. They want you to take statins, which has been shown to reduce the risk of serious disease by 30 to 50%. Why not diet? Why not a simple dietary change? Our average drop in cholesterol in 7 days is 22 milligrams per deciliter. And the sicker you are, the higher the cholesterol burden in your body, the greater the cholesterol reduction you get with a simple, non-cost, no side effect dietary change. Now, the question you might have is, even though diet has a major impact, a life-changing factor involved in chronic diseases, climate change, and COVID-19, will people change? Will they change their diet? Well, let's take a look at the past and see whether or not people can and are willing to make dietary changes. During World War I, there was the North Sea blockade set up by the British. The intention was to starve out the Germans, and they did. 400,000 Germans died of malnutrition between 1914 and 1918. Well, this blockade also affected the supply of foods to Denmark. And the people of Denmark decided to change their diet under the direction of Michiel Hinhede. Michiel Hinhede was a very famous researcher at these times, and he also had contacts with the Danish government. And what he recommended that instead of keeping with the basic 4 recommendations of good nutrition, that instead the Danes changed their diet to one where they ate the foods that the animals were eating. They ate the potatoes, the soybeans, the grains. And as a result of doing this, they let the animals starve to death. If you happen to live in Denmark during this period of time, and you were a pig farmer, you maybe had a piece of pig once in a while. If you were a rich person in Copenhagen, maybe a piece of beef once in a while. But otherwise, the population of Denmark during the period of World War I became essentially vegan. 3 million people. The results of this vegan diet, the change in the Danes' diet, the 3 million people, was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association back in the 1920s. And what they found was that the overall death rate of people in Denmark decreased dramatically, as well as, and in particular, the death rate from chronic diseases like diabetes and heart disease, a dramatic reduction. In fact, the reduction was labeled as one of 34%. It was claimed to be the lowest reduction the Danes have ever seen prior to World War I and even after World War I, a 34% reduction in death rate. If you'll notice, they also had a reduction in death from acute diseases. At that time, the world was suffering from the Spanish flu. The Spanish flu affected all of the world. In fact, they estimate that 50 million people died as a consequence of this flu. Well, they had approaches for the Spanish flu similar to the way we're approaching problems. They had public health measures, wore masks, did social distancing, tried to develop some vaccines. But it was, like I say, largely unsuccessful in the fact that a lot of people died worldwide. If you take a look at the death rate in Europe from Spanish flu, you find something quite interesting. And that is that the Danes, 3 million Danes, had the lowest death rate from Spanish flu of all the European countries, lower than their neighboring countries. And I believe that was as a consequence of changing to a diet of primarily plant foods. 3 million Danes changed their diet willingly, never went hungry, never suffered the problems of malnutrition and diseases that followed during the period of World War I. Will people change? Well, even in my lifetime, people have changed. When I was a young man, half the population smoked. In fact, it was so normal smoking that if you went into a doctor's lounge, you had to cut the air with a knife. It was so thick with smoke. Well, Arthur Terry, he came out in 1964, he's the Surgeon General, and he told the people that cigarette smoking was killing them. And what happened is people quit smoking. People who cared about themselves, people who had a little bit of understanding about what was going on, quit smoking. So now that fewer than 17% of people smoke. Recommendations have been made about reducing alcohol intake. Again, back in my youth, when we go out to lunch, a lunch was not a sociable event unless it was associated with 2 or 3 cocktails. Now drinking is a social disgrace, just like cigarette smoking is a social disgrace. My hope is that government reports, such as that one put out by C. Everett Koop, the report on nutrition and health for America, will make eating animal products a social disgrace. I can see the day coming when, if we go back to restaurants, you'll look at the neighboring table and you'll think to yourself, why don't these people understand? They don't understand. I can see from their personal appearance, and I glean from the health that they seem to reflect, that they must not understand the importance of a good diet. Well, all of us who know have an obligation to share and to make the world a healthier, better place by changing people's diets. COVID-19 has given us a chance to reflect. COVID-19 is the comet that could save planet Earth. I mean, think about it for a minute. If in China or if in the world, we were faced by a comet colliding with the planet and our immediate self-destruction, what would people do? The Chinese, the people from India, South America, Belize, we would all gather together. We do whatever we can to shoot down that comet. Well, folks, COVID-19 is that comet. We can see that we have the ability to change. We can see the importance of diet. We can see what happens when we improve our environment. Now we have to act. Because right now, if we act, We can recover. We don't want to figure these things out 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, when, for example, Florida is under 20 feet of water. Yeah, we may come to a clear understanding about the implications of diet on not only chronic disease, not only the COVID-19 virus, but also on the planet. We have to make very strong decisions now, very clear decisions, and put out efforts that are unconventional and maybe will seem unsurmountable to you, but certainly are necessary. And the effort is to get people to understand worldwide that diet is the common denominator when it comes to chronic illness, climate change, and infectious diseases. And there's really no room, as far as I'm concerned, for compromise. You can't design me a diet that adds dairy or poultry or beef that in some way or another says planet friendly. You can't design me a diet that is better than a vegan diet, one that eliminates all animal foods. And most specifically, the diet that I recommend is a diet based on starches that's also low fat with the addition of fruits and vegetables. We don't want to allow this to be a secret any longer, folks. We want to tell everybody. Thank you very much. I'm Dr. John McDougall. It took me a long time to put that talk together. I really couldn't make the flow for the connection of our most threatening problems for the 21st century. You know, I couldn't make a smooth connection, and it took me 6 to 12 months to put that type of thinking together. But I've really enjoyed sharing this with people, and I think I'll probably spend a good share of the rest of my life trying to get people to understand this common denominator. It's so simple, and all of us can do it. We can do it overnight. There are no downsides. So, my friends and colleagues, Jim Morris, can we get Jim in? What do you think about what I had to say? I've just, we'll hear from Jim in just a minute, but, I reflect, I think, there's similar things to what you believe.
Absolutely. I mean, you're telling the truth, and that has a ring to it. That has, you can tell that it's coming straight from the heart, and you're saying, look, we have seen this in individuals, and we are going to see this in Mother Earth too. Exactly the same situation.
Well, I think what people don't appreciate is the innate ability of the planet to heal. And if you've had the experiences I've had as a medical doctor taking care of 12,000 people, amazing things happen to these people once you stop the repeated injury. It's the same thing with the planet. I mean, we saw it with COVID-19. 17% reduction in greenhouse gases over the past year. And as I say, you can see the blue skies. So we're starting to realize the potential as far as the ability of Mother Earth to heal. I believe, or I wouldn't have had this day with you, I believe that we can save a future for our children, our grandchildren. We have to work together. We have to decide now. We can't do it later. And we have to do it in the proper order. And that means that changing our diet has to be the focus of attention. Jim, before I introduce you, do you have any thoughts on what I had to say?
Well, absolutely. Food is, as you know, I believe is the main thing. It's the only major change that every individual on the planet can make to have the most powerful impact to slow climate change and prevent the extinction of the human species. It all starts with the food, as you say, John, and I wholeheartedly agree. And it's an integral part of my presentation that's coming up.
Yeah. Heather, any chat questions that we should address before we go on to Mr. Hicks's presentation?
Well, there's a whole bunch coming in. How about this one from Marianne? When the whole planet becomes vegan, is there the possibility of depleting our plant food supply? How can it continue to be replenished if everyone is eating plants all the time, including the large animals?
Dr. Rao, do you have a thought on it?
Yeah, well, I mean, we have seen the data. The data is that we are already eating 85% of our food is already plant-based. Only 15% is animal-based. And to just get that 15% of animal-based foods, we are using up, 85% of the food we extract from the planet. So clearly, when we go fully plant-based, there'll be plenty of food left over for the animals to eat. So the animals have a chance to come back. Right now, they're all dying out. The wild animals are all dying out. So, yeah.
And as far as production for people, I mean, there are all kinds of figures out there that should convince you. For example, you can grow 10 times as many calories with potatoes as opposed to cows. 17 times as much protein you can get from various kinds of starches grown on the same acre of land that you get from cows. So there'll be a huge supply of food if we stop feeding it to the animals. That should be a simple equation.
Yeah. So, Dad, I have to ask. So one of the things I hear is from people, Dr. McDougall, you just need to stick to health. Leave the environment to other people. So why have you taken up this crusade? Why is this so important to you?
Well, because I want to attack people from every angle, and I don't have any problem with hitting them below the belt. It's the same thing when it comes to diet and my medical practice. My colleagues have said, look, why don't you just stick to food? Well, the reason is because if I don't condemn the current practices of medicine that don't work, people will go to the easy solution. They'll take the drugs, the surgery, et cetera. So I have to show them that what they're doing is ineffective. You never cure these diseases, these chronic diseases, with drugs. All you do is give people a bunch of excuses and a whole bunch of side effects. So I need to take away from them this holdout that I'm going to be saved by the medical business, by the professionals, by the scientists. Same thing with climate. Why do I focus on climate? Well, I'm talking to a whole bunch of different individuals with motivation. Some people out there are healthy, but everybody has to be concerned about planet Earth. I can't mention anybody so hardened, so unaware that they would allow things to continue as they are when so much is at stake, particularly our families, Heather. It's all about our families and the families of the people out there that are listening today. I know you care about your children and your grandchildren and your neighbors and your nieces. And if you know, you need to act. And now you know. So it's time to act. And I suppose I could stick to diet only. I could have left my medical colleagues alone and not informed you that bypass surgery for chronic coronary artery disease does not save lives. And diabetic treatments are extremely costly and increase the risk of dying of complications of diabetes if you aggressively treat patients. I could have just kept quiet about that. But if I let people have an out, that I'm going to be saved by the drug industry or by the surgeons, then they won't focus on what's really important. I'm giving you no out. If you want to save your family in terms of the climate, if you want to save Mother Earth, you want to have a livable place, then you have to put the climate as the most important factor. I've been doing this for a long time. And my greatest thrills in life have been helping other people. And I still get a great thrill out of that, seeing people get well. But you know what? Whether or not you cure your diabetes or your heart disease is relatively insignificant compared to what we're talking about today. It's like, I gave a talk at the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and they had the same reaction, is why do you have to focus on the climate? Why can't you talk about the medical treatments? The American College of Lifestyle Medicine is a group of 5,000 doctors that know about the kind of diet we're talking about in terms of curing disease. And this young doctor came up to me and said, I'm taking the board examination for the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and I plan to practice lifestyle medicine. But how am I going to do that on a dead planet? Nothing matters except to have our home.
Well, I know this has become a passion of yours, mostly when my son was born. You're a grandchild, and and thinking about the future of the planet has really become center stage for you when your grandchildren started being born. Yeah. So, I'm glad you're doing it. It's important. Let's see if there's any other
Well, I
questions.
just want to mention, I'm out here to win a popularity contest too.
We know that.
You know, okay, so be clear. My motivations are to make things better, make things right. You know, I'd like to make you happy also, but you know, I can get over that. I just want to make you informed, as the rest of our speakers are doing.